All right, welcome back for part 2, everyone. So, right off the bat, I know that some of you already notice this is a different pendant. In the middle of my part 2, the first time, I messed it up. So I had to take it all apart and get it right back to here so that we could continue from here. So for those keen eyeballs out there who already see that there are slight differences in this one from the last video, you're right, there are, because I rewrapped this thing, but it's pretty close. So anyway, the differences you see right off the bat is the first one I used 8 inches of wire. That's what's marked here. In this one I gave myself 12 inches of wire just to have a little bit more. So if you're watching ahead, 8 inches gets pretty tight down here. This is 8 inches right here. I cut the back wires to 8 inches where my marks are. So you see that you don't have too much left over if you used the original starting length. And you might not want too much left over if you're not doing any curly work. If you intend for curly work or to bring it down more to the bottom of the design, then give yourself a little bit more. I'm going to try to work with the original 8 inches that I gave you. All the other pendant frames are using 12 inches, and that's kind of my standard issue. I like to do 12 inches so that you have plenty of room to make decisions. All right, so yesterday we talked about inserting a small stone in here, and I showed you how to make kind of this little cage with this front wire so that you have a pocket that you could have slipped a bare stone into that space above the main focal stone. I used a pre-wrapped gemstone, so I went ahead and did a little coil wrap. It's not midway station, it's just a coil bezel against a 6mm faceted gemstone, and I tied it on by inserting the extended wires and wrapping it onto the frame right here and right here with the 22 gauge that it's coiled in. So before I continue, what I want to point out is this. Do I need these 2 flapped wires right here? I took them to the back, I tied them down, I pulled them down, and I made more back space in the event that I was going to use an uncaptured gemstone, just another gemstone to slip into that pocket. Then I would have more back seat, and I would have some flaps to catch that gemstone, and then I could put, additional wires. But in the case of the pre-wrapped one, I don't need it, right? I don't need these guys. Unless it's there for design. I have so much wire going on up here that really these interfere because they cover my gemstone unnecessarily. It's captured and it's tied on, so I don't need these flaps over it. So did I just wreck my whole pendant? What can I do? No, you can always change your mind because that's the beauty of you being the artist. So to get rid of, I think I am going to get rid of these 2 wires right here since my gemstone's tied on. I need to find the logical place to cut it off. The wire comes from the front, goes around the shoulder twice, flips onto the front, comes to the back, and is tied down and ends right here. So the parts that I don't need are these 2 flippers, and then obviously everything in the back that's attached to it. I don't want to wreck the capture. So the logical place to trim this wire off is right here. I'm going to take a snip and leave myself a couple of millimeters so that I can bend that turn back. So 1 snip, you have to be brave. You don't have to do this. If you're using a loose gemstone, keep these guys on there. And then you can help capture your gemstone. I'm going to snip this second one over here with a couple of millimeters to spare. I'm going to carefully peel these 2 front wires back off my frame. And because they're not attached to anything except themselves, it lifts right off my pendant. And then now I have a clean, beautiful, clean capture in the front with an attached gemstone and plenty of space to bring design down with the rest of my wires and not have my little gem there covered up. So I'll just tap these back with my plier. Get your plier tooth on the outside of the wire, then on the tip of this wire, and just help it come around that corner. Actually, I'm going to get a thinner plier so I can do that a little easier. So the cut is pointing to the back, and you don't feel it back here. Okay? And I'll just do this one. Brace on the outside of that wire. Get your plier head on the tip of that wire and just help it in. Reposition yourself so that you get a nice clean tap down on it. Okay? And that looks pretty good. Okay? So now, coming up here, I have, the rest of my wires to make bale with and to bring down for design. So I'm going to get 16 inches of 22 gauge half round wire for my bale wrap on this one. Alright, so I have 16 inches of 22 gauge half round. Straightened it out with my fingers. Remember that half round has a flat side, so we need to keep it facing always in the same direction. I have the flat side facing down. I'm going to bend over the top inch here and give a little hook. I'm going to take my frame, and the first thing I'm going to do is tie this whole bundle of wires together. So I'm just going to put that hook over the neck of this frame, and I'll just go around a couple of times. I'm working to keep all of these wires side by side and stacked neatly on top of each other. Once I get that first little 360 wrap, I'll just tighten it up and take the lower short portion of my wire and wrap it around the neck a couple of times. So that's about 5 or so wraps. You'll just squeeze them from the side, make sure they're nice and neat, and get them landed at the base of your neck. Okay? I'm going to peel off the front 2 wires for my bale. So now is the time to remove all of our tape. One of you asked me, how do you get the sticky stuff off the end of the wires from the tape? Well, the particular brand of tape that I use doesn't really leave sticky junk. There is blue painter's tape that is not this brand that might leave sticky stuff on your wires, but this one really does not, unless you leave the tape on there for like days and days, and then maybe it does. But if you have a little sticky junk that bothers you, before you continue, after you remove the tape, you can get your soft touch sanding pad at very high grit and just, once or twice over the spot where your tape is, and that gets rid of the sticky junk on your tape. Okay, on your wires. Alright, so there I go. I've got my neck wrapped up. I'm going to peel off the 2 very front wires, and I'm working square wires, so I'm working to keep them side by side, and the squares, the flat sides of the squares together so that they're not twisted on their points. You can pull them out slightly, and you can take a plier, help you get a nice 90 degrees on it. Make sure that upper wrap stays nice and tight. And just manage your half round wire if you're working half round. Let's split these 2 design stacks sideways and get them out of our way. So you can take a plier and pinch here at the neck, hold it tight. Most of the time we peel down the wires evenly, like 2 to one side and 2 to the other, or 3 and 3. You don't have to do it that way. I'm going to do it that way today. But just saying, you don't have to split them evenly. If you have a design idea where you want all the wires to the one side, you can do that. So I'm just laying these wires down horizontally, side by side, and I've got my bale wires right here in the middle. I'm going to take my half round, make sure that first upper wrap is tight, jump onto the bale wire, make sure the flat side of that half round stays facing the 2 square wires as you work. get a couple of wraps and then jiggle these square wires. Make sure that they're square, right? And that they're neat. After you get a few wraps, it'll be real easy, but if your wires are turning, then now would be the time to handle that. So they want to be side by side like that as you're working. And then I like to just hold on to my half round. You can go overhanded if you want to, or you can just hang on to it and turn the whole pendant and just coil it down one coil at a time. Be careful that your half round doesn't start to turn, right? The flat side, you always want to manage to keep it facing the square wires. Or certainly you can go the traditional underhand, overhand, wrapping like that. Just don't hit yourself in the eye with the long wire. I'm going to do it like this because this is a little faster. And I'm going to turn a 1 1/4 inch bale wrap. So I'll wrap until I make 1 1/4 inch. And I'm keeping my wraps side by side. Manage that last one. Don't cut this wire off. You should have several inches left on the bale wire once you get to 1 1/4 inch. Straighten your bale wire out. Make sure you have a nice line. Use your plier to help you if you need to do some little bitty tapping to get it nice and flat and straight. You can hold it here. Use your fingernail if you need to scooch coils. That's best done before you tap them down. They land. Okay, so here I am. This is how you should be looking. And I'm just going to take and put a slight forward bend on my bale wires. And then I'm going to use my fingers right here in the middle of the wraps to create a little curve and make a bale space for my chain. I'm going to bring these wraps down to meet the wraps right here below this neck. So I'm just going to manage these wires on their way down, straight down the back of my pendant. Right there I'm going to give a little push and get the neck close. My marks right here are the 8 original inches. So if your wires are right here, that's fine. Remember that I rewrapped mine and I came newly with 12 inches. But here's your original length, so your wires might only be right here, and that's fine. If you're watching ahead, you know, you could start with 12 original inches if you feel like you need it. This is probably 3 or 4 millimeter. I like to leave a nicer size bale because you never know if they want to slip it over some chain, you need room for a big clasp, or they could slip it over some beads. If you need to make that loop nicer, you can get your round nose in there and give love taps. And when you're ready, take the extended half round wire all the way around the neck of the bale and wrap it all together 3 or 4 times, whatever gets you to a nice decorative spot. I'm going to go maybe a few more and take these. I've got the wire, so right there. And when you're ready to end these wraps and you've got the bale wire attached, make sure that last wrap has no bubble on it. Hold it there with your thumb, lift your little back wires up, and then give a couple of wraps around this guy to terminate your wires, or the half round, I mean. Okay, so we'll end the half round just like that. Give a little snip right there. Leave a couple of millimeters so that you can tuck it under nicely. Tuck it underneath there, like that. Then you can lay these 2 wires back down. Okay, again, 8 inches. If you started with 8, you might only be here with the rest of your wire. So if you're watching ahead, I would recommend 12 inches just to give you some comfort space. And then I like to tap the bale a little bit, look at your pendant head on, make sure it's still sitting right. Get back on your board, get on a horizontal line with your bale and the tip of your pendant, and make sure that everything is settled nicely. You don't have to kill it, but just make sure everything is settled and on an even plane. Okay? I'm going to trim these two back wires off right here. Just to give myself what you got if you started with 8. Okay? So I'll leave those two back there for the bale. I should have my 8 inches up here. Let me trim it. So yours might already be here. I was going to show you a longer design, but I'm thinking I should just stay with 8 inches since I started you guys that way on this particular pendant. All right, so we have our extended wires out this way, and we put our bale back this way. So now I have all this space above this gemstone and also additionally down the body if I want to for design. I'm going to do some simple design. I'll push these two up, get them kind of turned out of my way. Normally I like to flip over to the front just because I like my bales very slim, but you could, go the opposite direction and kind of bubble them out as well. We'll do that on some other ones, but on this little guy, because he's such a sleek little design, I'm just going to take this front wire. I'm about halfway in the bale there, at the length of the bale. And I'm just going to make a little tiny flip to the front, push it low, let it skirt my gemstone right here, and slope down the side of my pendant right there. I'll take my next one, I'll flip it a little higher, bringing it to the front of my bale so that I don't interfere with chain. Just use my thumb and I'm going to push it right down next to the other one. Okay, we'll just leave those wires fanned out like that. On this side, we can do the same. I'm going to go a little bit lower and make them an uneven pair. So I'll go a little bit lower on this one, slope it off the side of my pendant, make sure that turn is pushed back onto the bale. You got another one coming, so make a little space. Just push that onto the center of your pendant, take your thumb and push the wire back. So we've got a nice slim neck up here, and just make sure these wires are all sloping down the front nicely. And I'm going to bring the pair in to the frame slightly. I don't, so we can cover up the business of that bare space. So just shape them until you get nice, elegant slopes. Like this. And then before we continue, before we go on, you can take a slightly wide plier and we can thin these out a little bit. Get on the front and back of the wire and give gentle squeezing pressure. Hold on to the leading stretches so that they stay in place. And only do this if you need to the ones that you need to. So here I've got kind of a wide back one. Slip my plier on the front and back of it. Do a gentle squeeze and narrow that up. Okay, if you need to. This lower one here, I could pull it out some. All right, so I can pull some of these out for elegance. I'm going to handle them from the back if I can and just give a little turnout on the wire. Just a little tiny turnout. This is my favorite bale design because it's slim, it's easy, and it's elegant. But we'll do some other ones that I like also. And you can weave these if you want to, or you can twist them because they're square. I showed you that in Zoe. Or you can take them down the sides just elegantly, like in the Lydia tutorial. Those are linked at the end of this video. Okay, so just a little flip out, give some little elegance up there. And then our wires are shorter. So, you know, if you can't bend them all the way down to the bottom, like mine aren't going to make it, we can take and just terminate them into here with some elegance, or drop, you know, some curls if you want to. So I'll start with this right-hand side. Just kind of slope it off right there where those turns are. Put your thumb there, make sure your lines are nice. If you're weaving, you know, you can weave to about right here. And just take this one, do a nice turn. And just give it some little design work like that. I'm going to go ahead and cut it. I took off about 1/4 of an inch there. And I'll use my round nose plier. I'll get to the end of that wire and I'll just help give it a little turn and lay it into the space next to my gemstone. So I'm kind of just cupping the shape of my gemstone with that wire. And if you can do it, get your plier on the front of it and try to turn it into that space just right behind your gemstone. Work smooth, small moves. Keep this side kind of down along the side. You can get a nice fine flat nose. Grip the wire carefully and help scooch it back there a little bit more if you need to. Just so the end of it kind of lands, you know, back here behind that gemstone. Just work carefully. You can do it. Making like a little J, and then you can push that back a little bit once you get it there. So you've just got that little dip underneath the gem. You can go with the opposite side. Make sure your lines are elegant. Hold it right there about where the shoulder is. Use the belly of your stone to make a nice curve. Kind of frame the other one. Go just below the other one. Keep that curve there. Bring this end up and complete the curve nicely, just like that. It's a little scary move, but now you're going to take this one out a little bit. Let it come out at its hinge and save your nice curve. Turn that end and point it back into that space. Get your thumb on it and push it back and down onto your gemstone right there. It's going to want to bounce forward a little bit, but that's okay. You should have a little bit of it right here at the back. And you can turn it down. So I'm holding the front down where I want it, right there for my design. And I'm going to take this little tip and I'm just going to bend it down. I'm going to lay it right next to that shoulder. It's a tight fit. I'm still holding the front, and all I'm doing with this end is turning it so that it sneaks underneath that wire. You can't see it, but it'll lock right there. You know, if you just get that little turn on it and stick it into that armpit right there, it should stay for you. This other one's kind of just hanging out right there. There's not enough of it to turn down, but we could, if we felt like we needed to, just turn the wire. You're not really pulling it too much, you're just turning the tip of the wire to face down. And then you could also turn the tip of the wire just slightly into the armpit there as well. So you get this cute little design on the front, and you can just use your fingers and scooch them a little bit if you feel like you need to for the elegance. And I love that. Okay? So with these other two, hopefully you've got enough just to make it down here to the bottom. If you don't, then you can come off to the back and just, find a place to tuck them maybe down here or tie them off up here and just make little shoulder turns. If you have enough wire, we'll go ahead and just scooch down the front, come in between that front one, just make a nice elegant line, turn it down, the curve of your stone, and just work that into some elegance until you get a nice line that you like. You should have about 1/4 of an inch, and we can dive and tie it into there. Okay, if this isn't going elegant for you or your wire's a little wonky, you can twist these and scallop them just for a different look. So the idea is to tuck that end and tie it off, but I'm going to go ahead and scallop this wire. This square wire, it only works with square wire. So right here, I'm going to hold my nice pinch at the neck and pull this out slightly. I'll get a nice flat plier and I'll take the wire right about here. I'll hold right here and just create a turn. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I'll move down to the end of my wire and I'll repeat this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, you're going to just look and make sure your scallop is nice. It hardens the wire slightly and it gives you a little different look. And where you pinch it, we can leave the top, undone. So this one I turn to the right. If you want mirrored scallops, you turn this one to the left. So coming up here, I'll pinch right there about the same spot, pull it out slightly, grip my wire, giving about 1 inch for the turn. And now I'm going to turn to the opposite direction. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4. This is square wire and I'm gripping it on the square, not on its edges. 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you have a weird spot, grip in that weird spot and turn it slightly and make it unweird. Okay? If you've nicked anything, bust out your sandpaper, your soft touch sanding pad, get on that scallop, and get your tool marks off of it, right, before you go on while it's straight and away from the stone. Okay, easy peasy. And now we'll take this, coming down the same, in between those two wires there, you'll feel how much harder that is. So you might have to force the curve a little bit because it won't want to curve for you now that we made it hard. And you want to make sure that's laying down. So you got a nice elegant turn. When you get down here, take the tip of your wire. It's going to want to raise the rest of it off of the pendant, and that's fine. Let it turn the bottom into that space. You still have these two back wires back here. If they're in your way, just part them. We might get rid of them later. We might tie them off. Okay, and just watch this line before you wrap it all the way back, that it's flowing the way you want it to. Make sure that that wire is laying down right there nicely. that it doesn't spring forward too much, that it's laying down in between the top wire and your side wires so you can see your little scallop. Get that end right through the bottom there and bend it back. Check the line, see that you love it. Before you make the hard bend on it, you can do some shaping here because that scalloped wire is very hard. So I get it lined up. Just going to leave that tip kind of right there for a second, just nice and tight, but not totally tied off. And I'm going to work this other one down now. I'm going to take any weird bend out of it that I created while I was twisting it. Make sure that I still got my elegant little line right there. I might have to fiddle this wire back into some elegance since I altered it. Make sure that's nice and straight down the side. Let it curve down the side of your pendant. And again, you might have to force the curve a little bit because the wire's a little harder now. Put it right there along the side of those wires and just on the inside of those turns, so it kind of covers them up a little bit. Get it down here. Keep its position. Get that tip bent down, and you might use a plier because it's small and hard. Get it turned in there. Get the wire laying back down where you want it. Get the back end of that wire. Don't collide into this other one here. And just flip it back tight. Not killer tight, just tight. Like that. Before you dedicate it now, I pulled a little too much, so maybe I want to flare this back out a little bit. Make it look more like the other side and get that inside wire more inside. And get my scalloped wire a little more to the outside. Just work slow and patient moves. When the wire is scalloped like this, you can make mean bends like that one, but you can easily take them back out if it happens and you don't want it. Okay, this wire slid back, my untwisted wire, a little bit, so I'm going to push it forward. Just going to work this with my fingers and get it where I want it. Small moves, just get it slightly to the inside like that one, and then lay that wire down next to it. If that moves off the neck, put it back. Shape it the way you want it, and then push that wire back when it gets closer. Okay, and that's about good right there. I love the way that's looking. Pinch these little spaces closer together a little bit. And now I'm going to go ahead and tie some of these wires off. My two back wires, they've been hanging out here for a long time. We can cut them and just curl them back. And these two guys also, we can just, they're too short to make a 360, I think, around this bar. Let me see. I'll do it, and then if I make it, you guys do it. If I don't make it, we'll do it a different way. So I'm going to hold everything now that I fiddled everything nicely into place. And I'm going to bring this wire down to my wraps. Hopefully I got enough to go completely around this thing and get that cut end back into the inside and pointing backwards. I might, just barely. So I'm right there at the edge of my wraps. I brought it basically 360 around that bottom. Hopefully you got a little more than I do, but I got just enough to turn that cut end in and back so that the cut lives facing the back. I'm just going to work it with my small fine plier nicely. Careful not to slip and scratch your stone. Just roll that tip back until it locks down. Should not have altered your lines at all up here. Okay? So, we just barely did it. So this one here now too. Hold what you worked hard for in place. Take this wire to a hard bend down there by the wraps. Make sure nothing moved. Hold that nice curve in the front. Bring this wire up along the cup. You know, if you need to tap it to get it nice and close. And then bring this tip over and through that space. This one's a little longer, so I'm going to pre-cut it before I tap it all the way down. And now I'm going to tap it all the way down by getting my plier to the front and back of that wire, giving a nice clean squeeze, just like that. Woo! She's a beauty. And now with these little ones in the back, we can just terminate them. If you feel like you need some more back seat, or these guys, you know, where you tucked the two front design wires are messy, you know, cover them up with these guys a little bit. Make something pretty out of the length you've got. Rather than just cutting it off utility style, you can drop a cute little curl right there. Make it land next to that one so you can tie it. Covers up that little blemish. Same thing with this one. Can make a nice little curled back end, leave it next to there so I can tie it, and it covers up that little wire blemish there too. This is the back of the stone. Make sure your tips are laying inward and down and that you don't feel them. And then we can get some scrap 22 half round that we've had laying around here that we've been cutting off. A couple inches is all you need per side. You could use 26 gauge also if you want to. Just make a couple of wraps right here and tie that down so that it camouflages any kind of messy back work you did there. This is 22 half, so just 2 or 3 is plenty. So there's a couple of them. I'll pull this first one nice and tight. Nice and tight. I'll cut it off, leaving a couple of millimeter hanging so I can fold the corner down, the end down, and then get on top of it and push, and it should slide underneath that wire for you. Okay, nice and clean. Do the same with the other side now. Cut it, leaving a couple of millimeter to spare. Take a fine plier, turn the tip of that end down, get on top of it, and push, and then it'll slip underneath the wire. Okay, so that one's tied off. You can turn this end all the way in once you get a nice tie, and then we'll just use the remainder of that scrap 22 half round, and we'll do this side. Okay, so there it is. I think I got one more wrap on this side than on the other side, but it's okay. Come to this side. Cut it with a couple of millimeter to spare. Turn the tip down and under, get on top, and tap it until it goes underneath the main wire. And then go ahead and curl this end up and lock it all down. And that's it, you guys. Woo! Look at this beautiful pendant. You want to make sure that these elements are laying down, that you got a nice flat neck, that you have, you know, beautiful lines along the sides. You can take your fine grit sanding pad, protect your stone, And, you know, take your tool marks off the top here. These little sanding pads make really quick work of small tool marks, and they're squishy, so they go into all the crevices there, and you can just treat it like a little sponge. Keep your finger on top of your gemstones so that you're not sanding on your gemstone, or put a piece of paper or something there until you get your sanding done. It's just light sanding. Put your fingertip there and just keep the pad off your stone. Alright, you guys, this should be beautiful once it's all patinaed up. She's gorgeous. I hope you love her. And I'm going to go ahead and continue to do some other bale wraps here and some follow-up video. You know, you just fiddle this piece until you love it. You can make small adjustments with your fingernails for these bits up here. If you feel like they need some hardening, my favorite thing is to burnish, right? So if you have a burnishing tool, use it. If you don't, you can take your round nose plier. Stay only on the clean, beautiful, rounded part. Don't hit your stone or the wires with these sharp corners. And just give metal on metal, rub it, and it'll harden these wires some. You'll see it starting to turn the metal a little bit shiny. I like to just harden these neck areas right here. You see it turning a little shiny? So it's burnishing and it's hardening, and that'll help to keep these elements stable without tying them up. They're not very long. If they were much longer and wider apart, I might put a little tie up there to make sure they all stay. But this burnishing usually does it. And you'll be able to feel how much harder that little bit has made these wires. Look down your profile, make sure everything's beautiful, and put your favorite chain in there and enjoy it. Patina and polish if you want to, or don't if you don't. There's room here and there for metal bead balls. If you want to do some metal beads on your piece, give gentle nudging where you think you might need it, if you need it. That's it. All right, you guys. Thanks for being here. If you enjoyed this project, please give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment, let me know how you're feeling. And if you make one, please look me up on social media and tag me with your beautiful work so that I can celebrate your lovely creation with you. All right, we'll see you for the next one. Much love. We'll see you next time. All right, you guys, so I've done a nice patina on this. I haven't quite polished it out, but I decided I wanted some bead balls down here below. Meh, I'm not crazy about the one I stuck in there. I might take it out, but I love these three down here. So I thought I'd do this one with you. So I'll take these and I'll position them here in the way that I like them. I love how that looks down there. To keep them in the front, I'm actually going to tie them off. I'm going to try to get them up there. If I push them to the back wires and tie them off back there, they're all going to scooch back here. So to keep them in the front of my pendant, I'm just going to hold on to the one side so my beads don't fall off. And I'll work one side at a time. I'm going to approach the frame from the bottom inside. There's the tiniest space to get me in between that wire right there, these two and that one. And I'll pull some of my wire in. I'll make sure I have an even amount to work with. Whoop! On the other side. So just like that, you see, by doing it this way, they'll live more in the front of the pendant. So I'm not going to tie this until I get the other side threaded. So that's good. I've leveled out my wire so that I can have even amount on both sides. And I'll just whittle this into that little space somehow with a plier right here. Try to pry a little bitty opening if you need to. Hopefully you just got one. Like my other side had a little opening, but this side did not. So I just pushed the wire a little bit, made a little opening to get my bead wire threaded. So once they're laying nicely, you got to try to do that a couple more times. So I'll go once more in there. I'm holding the beads in place here now. So there's one. You never want to do just one unless you're using thicker wire. So I'm going to do 3 and make it look like it's a deliberate part of design. There goes 2. Pull real tight. Maybe 2 is enough. And I'm not going to cut that yet. I might sink it to the back and do a couple of wraps to the back to make sure they never shift. So I'll get this one caught up with 2 wraps. Goes 1, nice and tight. There goes the second one, nice and tight. Beautiful. Just nudge the beads with your fingers and get them in the middle. Yeah, I love that there, so I'm going to put those beads there. I might just leave that one there for grins, or do something different there. It didn't quite get in there right, so you can see the wire. It's off center, so I might redo that. Don't knock your gemstone out of place if you do anything up here. But this down here, I love it. Okay, so if you feel like 2's not enough, you've got more wire, you can take the stretch back here, you know, do a couple more wraps around this back one if you feel like you need to. If you don't, then don't. And just break the wire off. Because I'm the way I am, I'm going to do a couple more on this back wire to make sure nothing ever unravels in the front there. And then once I get that, I'll just hold it with some pressure and do big circles until the wire breaks. This one is the same. I'll take, whoop, well, there it broke right there, so I got no choice. Otherwise, I would have stretched it and done a couple of stitches. But since it's not necessary, woo, I love those 3 little beads down there. So I'm going to go back and finish my patina and finish my polish, and then this will be done, you guys. I'll be back in a minute with the beautiful result of our work today. She just be more beautiful now that she's all cleaned up, polished up, patinaed. Oh my goodness, I love her. All right, you guys, I hope you loved this. This is the final finish. I know I always do that. I think I'm going to finish in a minute, and then I ended up adding these little bead balls. My gemstone's still a little wet. I just washed it all off. But you can see how gorgeous this looks. And you can do any kind of whimsy up there, you know, to your pleasure. So, all right, much love. We'll see you for the next one. Thanks again, you guys.